Hello, everyone. So today we are diving into the basics of Procreate animations, how all of the settings work, how the frames work, what different types of options you have, really understanding all of the different nuances of the animations within Procreate is really going to help you feel empowered to be able to make some really in-depth and complex animations without getting frustrated by everything that the animations require and that they can do. So we're going to talk about at a very basic level all of the settings that you need to understand so that once you're done, you'll feel really confident in using this technology. All right, so let's dive in. The most basic thing you need to know is how to turn on the animation to begin with. So if you're going to go up to the wrench and you're going to go to canvas, and there's this little toggle called animation assist. If I turn that off, it will turn my drawing just back into a normal static drawing here. If I turn that on, what is going to happen is that all of my layers now become frames in my animation. So you see this little bar down there. As you can see, layer one, that's my first one, layer two, second one, layer three, third one, four, five, six, so on and so forth. So the order that you put your layers in, it's kind of confusing. It's a little bit backwards. The topmost layer is going to be your last frame, which I guess makes sense, but for me, it seems backwards. And your bottommost layer is going to be your first frame. So that's just something to keep in mind. When you click that animation assist, all of your layers will become frames. All right, the next thing that's important is to think about whether you have anything in your animation that's going to be static and is going to appear throughout your entire animation. So, for example, in this animation, the base of the candle is static. It's not going anywhere, it's not moving, and it also can be seen for the entire animation. If you have really complex animations, it's rare you're going to have something that's static the whole time, but maybe you have a background, right? So maybe you have someone running through the jungle and the jungle is static, or you have someone moving, sitting in their house or something like that, and the house is the static part, right? So it can either be an object or it can be a background, right? So for in this case, it is that candle base and the garnish in front of it. So how do you make that happen, right? So if I pause this and I click on that frame, and then I click on it, there's this option to have it be the background. If I turn this off, it disappears, and it only is just present in that one frame. So if I make sure that I click that background, that is always going to appear. So once I have my background image selected, it's now time to make the rest of your design. So, in this case, these have already been created. But usually what I like to do if the rest of my layers have not been created yet, let's say that these are not here, I have my static image. I will just keep it there. I will make sure that I select a new layer. So that way I'm working off of that static image, but I'm able to see it and know where I'm putting my elements, but I'm on a new layer. So that's going to be the new element that appears in my next frame. And so, let's say I draw that little flame there, then I'm like, I want to add another one. So I add another layer and I add one there, and so on and so forth as I build my design. Something that's important is that you can either, so if I wanted to, add a layer on top of this layer 6, I can add a layer 7 here in the layers panel that will pop up down at the bottom. Or instead, I can just click add frame. So if you click add frame and then you come to your layers, it will then add another layer on top. It just names them a little bit differently. As you can see, it's called frame 6 instead of layer 7. So it will just be layered a little or named a little bit differently, but it has the same effect. So those are both ways in which you can add various elements. And then, once I finish a layer, so let's say these aren't here yet, but let's say I just did layer 2 and then I'm going to do layer 3. I like to look at the one before it as I'm drawing the next one so that I can see how the animation is progressing. But then let's say I'm done with layer 3, I'm going to click off layer 2 and now I'm going to click on layer 4 and then so on and so forth. Let's say I'm done with layer 4, I'm going to check off layer 3 and click on layer 5 so that I can then see what's happening and I can see the progression as it's going. And then just make sure that when you're done that you click on all your layers again so that you have all of your frames show up at the bottom. All right, cool. So that's just the basics of making sure your layers are all in the right order, that you have enough layers to begin with. You have your static image and your background. So let's talk about the various settings that we have with our layers. So again, we have the ability to turn on a background. You also have the ability to duplicate or delete a layer. It's the same way as you would with, in your layers tab, it will have the same effect. You also have the ability to change the hold duration. So let me show you what this does. If I increase this, what it basically has done is created a whole bunch of new like duplicate frames. But it's a way of doing it without having to manually duplicate the frame 37 times and then delete it 37 times. So if you see, if I play it, it is going to just stay on that frame for a very long time. It's just passing through 37 times. It's about to catch up. There we go. And then it will start over. Just keep that in mind. You can then turn that off. So just click on the frame again, put that hold duration back down to none, and then it will not create duplicates of itself like that. The next thing you want to look at are these general settings. So here's where things get fun. You have the loop option. That's where what it was doing before, where it's just playing the animation over and over again. You also have ping pong, which is fun. What it will do is it will basically play it forwards and then play it backwards again, which can be kind of cool, especially for this one with the little flame going up and down. So that's what ping pong does. You also have one shot. That's just going to stop it. So it will play it once and then it will stop. All right, so just pick the one that makes sense for your given animation. You also have frames per second. So this is going to determine how long your animation is. So if I turn that up quite a bit, it goes very, very fast. So it is doing, I think we had put 27 frames per second. So if you have like a really detailed animation where there's so much nuance in the movement, you're going to want more frames per second, so that it's moving a little bit more quickly. If you have like large jumps like this one does, you're going to want to slow it down so that people don't get sick and confused, right? So if I turn that down to 2 frames per second, that's now going fairly slowly. So for this one, I feel like 4 or 5 is a fairly good option. Next we're going to pause this, it's getting dizzying. Onion skin frames. So basically what this is going to do is it is going to show you the other frames that are in your design. All right, so if I'm over here at 1, 2, I can see the other frames kind of lightly in a kind of transparent way behind that one that I've clicked on. If I turn this onion skin frames to none, then every time I click on a frame, all I am seeing is that one frame. All right. So if you're like, why have all my frames disappeared? Where did they go? Why can't I see them? Make sure your onion skin frames is not all the way to 0. You also have onion skin opacity. So if I turn that all the way up, I can see my other frames perfectly as they would appear, as the normal frame. So there's no transparency at all with the design. If I turn this all the way down, it's basically like I've turned onion skin frames off. They are so transparent that they are invisible. So this can just play around with this depending on how much you want to be able to see all of the additional frames behind the frame you have selected. So another really cool use of the onion skin frames is not only to see how your animation is shaping up and make sure you don't lose track, but also for tracing, because you will always see all of the other elements behind it. And so if there's anything you need to trace, like the little flame or something like that, instead of duplicating it, you can always use the onion skin frames to your advantage to then just trace it onto your next frame. All right, so now let's talk about the blend primary frame. When you activate this option, what's basically going to happen is the opacity of your primary frame is just basically going to change in its opacity a little bit. So it's going to give it a little bit more of an illusion that it's blending with the other frames behind it instead of just like fully blocking it out. So when we don't have this on, as you can see, there's just a really subtle shift in that flame at the very top there. When I have it off, that flame is blocking out the flames behind it because that is the clip that I am currently working on. And so it's saying this is the one that needs to be out in front that we need to be seeing. If I turned on blend primary frame, it's going to kind of blend with all of the ones and the behind it, right? So this can be really helpful if you're wanting to get have that blending effect and getting a more cohesive view of how everything is working together, and get a sense of all of the clips behind the one you're currently working on. Lastly, you have your color secondary frames. And what this is going to do is it's going to make your other frames stand out more. As you see, it turned it neon green. That can be really helpful, is if you're having an issue kind of differentiating your frames, especially like in this example, they're all very similar colors. Like if I have, especially when I have the blend primary frame on, they kind of meld in together so much. Turn on your color secondary frame. This is just going to then change anything behind, anything that is not your current frame. It's going to change it into a different color so that you can better see what you're working with and how things are going. All right, so the last thing we need to talk about is how to export it. You don't want to make this beautiful animation that you really can only play when you are using Procreate and have your Procreate app open. That's not cool. So how do you export it to actually preserve the animation? So go to share. You are going to want to come down here to the animated options. You're going to need to pick one of the share layers options. So you can pick a GIF, you can pick a PNG, an MP4. Any of those options will preserve your animation and make sure that when you play it, it's basically like a little movie so that the animation still stays preserved. So you're just going to want to pick any one of those options. Do not pick any of the image options because that will just share it as a static image. And that is everything you need to know about how to make basic animations in Procreate. From there, you can take these skills and really, make more advanced animations. It's going to come a lot easier to you now that you know all of those settings. So if this video was helpful to you, if you could hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, keep coming back to Adventures with Art for more Procreate tips.